But seems like it's been mixed emotions. Some headlines you see, okay, we see a light at the end of the tunnel. I'm watching the virus trends on the map, and it seems like they're going down. And if they go down at the rate they came up, it could be 2 weeks to where we're at a very low level. And then you read another headline that's Washington wants to close till May 15th and drag this out longer. And I guess it all depends on and all these hot spots. But man, it's all over the place. It seems like. All right, as we get people joining on here, as a reminder, I know we should get more people in here soon. Just mute your phone or your computer. What happens, we'll get background and echoing. That way, if you want to chime in, you can unmute yourself. I don't want to have to mute everybody if we get those noises, because then I don't know how to throw somebody into the conversation without needing to find them. Now, there is a checkbox or a chat box here. I got some questions and stuff that certain dealers want to go over, and I'm going to make sure we hit those. But hit the chat box with anything else. I'm going to try to remind myself to keep an eye on that. If you don't want your name mentioned in the chat box, or you don't want me to say, hey, so-and-so is wondering about this, just hit me personally, and that way I can maybe not reference the name if you want to kind of hide who you are. But hit the chat box. Anything you want to share, maybe with everybody else, but you don't want to chime in vocally, just type it in the chat box also. I'll try to keep an eye on that. Again, I got about 4 or 5 things that other people wanted to go over. I got things that I think we can talk about, but I want to open it up with Joe Chura from Dealer Inspire, who's also part of Cars.com, who's got some good insight and stats, and I want to see, what kind of information they're getting and seeing patterns out there. One of the topics I do want to bring up, and maybe Joe can hit on this, is somebody's referenced, and I'm going to bring it up earlier, that they're hearing dealers he's working with having an increased business week over week. So it's encouraging. If John Anderson, part of my team, is on here, I might have him chime in. I know we've been on some calls and we're seeing kind of the same thing with some of our dealers. So Joe, sure, with that, I want to know what you're seeing with dealers' traffic on their sites and other insight that you guys can bring to the table. One, and then two, should I make you presenter? Do you got some stuff to show with that?
No,
No?
some
Okay.
stuff. I mean, you know what? Yeah, don't worry about it. I could send a link, or if you have a link to the blog that I created, that's what I'm going to be referencing. You can send it after this, so you don't have to share
And
my.
again, I can make a presenter. It's 2 seconds if you like to, because I wouldn't mind, again, anything you want to show. I think there was a couple charts on that blog that I referenced to you on, if not, but it's up to you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think
That's
I
fine.
made you presenter. I think if you just hit OK, did it pop up for you? Or no?
Here. It's
Because
not.
what I can do is I'll make myself presenter again. And
Guy in the world. You just had to be the only guy using GoToMeeting, huh?
yeah,
Couldn't
I
use
know
it.
everybody's using Zoom and stuff. I feel like maybe we're doing it the archaic way here. Let me see you again, Joe. Where you at? Where you at? Where you at? Where you at? There you are. If I click here, make presenter, and I hit yes, you should have a little window that pops up to accept it,
Yeah, it's asking me to.
and then you pick which screen.
Yeah, I just have to acknowledge some security things that
Oh,
are.
I see what you're saying. Okay, if it's not, no big deal.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I just want to make sure I could do it here. Are you seeing my screen?
Not yet. Because Dealer Inspire, if you all don't know, hosts websites, and they have a lot of data and looking at the traffic that they're getting, and I'm assuming, again, engagement that consumers are doing off of it. It seems like I was just on a call as we're waiting for Joe's screen. Just on a call with one of my dealers in Illinois. He's doing pretty good. His sales now, I'm saying pretty good because his sales are down 25 to 30%, which is encouraging because he's still on pace to sell 140 cars. He's used to selling 2 something. So the encouraging part of that, one, there's not hardly a dealer I haven't talked to who wouldn't mind having that kind of pace still, because some of our dealers are down at least 50% or closed altogether or just barely getting any business. But the point on that was they're really seeing a lack of floor traffic, but his leads went up from about 700 a month, he said, to now 800. So any lack of sales right now could be process management and template, follow up and so forth. And Joe, did it work for you or no? Because we don't see your screen.
Yeah, it's not. It's
Okay.
it's trying to authorize something through my security and privacy
Okay.
settings. It's
That's
going
fine.
blank.
That's fine. If you want to, maybe I should go with Zoom or something next time, right?
Yeah, no, not a problem. So yeah, I'll just talk anecdotally and some facts that we're seeing. So one of the, I mean, first off, Jason, thanks for having me here. This is awesome and it's cool. You get this group together. You guys are on the cutting edge of thinking about inventory, and I've had many deep conversations with Jason, and really believe in what he's saying in his vision for inventory and how to maximize one of your largest assets. So
I
thanks
appreciate
again
it.
for having me. So one of the things that we're looking at, and I have the privilege to see across all Dealer Inspire websites and Cars.com, is traffic and statistics across about 65 million visitors on a monthly basis. And one of the things we created in 2015 or so, and I filed a patent on it, was something called Roxanne. And what Roxanne does is it looks at event data on visitors. And what event data means is our points of engagement. So if someone is shopping on a VDP page, or they're clicking on a button, they're clicking on a form, they are submitting a lead, you name it, we're tracking it. So it basically looks at all these events, and it will calculate the value of those events. And the way we derive the value is we actually look at people that are buying cars. So we are connected to just Dealer Inspire, about 2,000 DMSs across 3,500, 4,000 dealers. So we're getting DMS sales data, and we don't share anything. We just ingest this data. On a dealer by dealer basis, we can show the ROI, or we can show sales matching data on certain products. But really what we're doing it for on a macro level is to measure any sort of sales lift, and to also look at, hey, if we make a change here, how does that impact enterprise-wide things? So one of the benefits to this is we can understand what a consumer is doing when they're buying a vehicle. So once we get the sales match data, we then look kind of upstream, and we say, what did this customer do across the Cars network before they bought a car? What buttons did they click? What pages did they visit? Were they on Cars.com? Were they on the Dealer Inspire website? How long were they on for? And we start to develop and see a pattern, and then we use pattern recognition to predict when we think a customer is going to buy a car, because we've seen enough customers that have purchased a vehicle or serviced or made a service appointment to know, hey, the customer is exhibiting, or they're actually doing things like other customers have done, so we can model to determine or to really understand their intent. So that all being said, what does that mean? So out of the 65 million visitors on a monthly basis that we're looking at, we're capturing over 1 billion points of event data. So over 1 billion, there's 40 million plus per day that we are capturing. And I can tell you that it gives us a good opportunity to understand what is happening in the marketplace. So and I can tell you at Cars.com, week over week, we have saw leads were up 22% week over week. So that's a great indicator to tell us, hey, something is going on different from last week. Visits were up 10.3%. And the organic leads were up 25%. So of the 22% lift in leads, 25% of those were organic. So it's not like we're buying more traffic. Something is changing, right? So then I took it a step further, and I said, okay, well, what's going on over the Dealer Inspire websites? So, well, Cars.com has about 22, 23 million visitors on a monthly basis. Dealer Inspire websites have about 40 million. So now I'm able to look at that as a metric to see, hey, did something change week over week? In dealer website leads, I saw increased even about 15% week over week. One of the really interesting metrics, though, that we're measuring based on what I had just mentioned, the event data, is we can tell if someone is an engaged shopper. So what is an engaged shopper? It's a shopper that is not just going to the website, looking at a few vehicles and bouncing. They're engaging with higher intent actions. They're engaging with forms. They are calling. They're doing things that exhibit buying signals. So that metric is up almost 10%. Which if you go back to that stat I said earlier, and you look at the cars.com visitors that are up 10%,
Yeah.
but leads are up 22%, it goes to show you that the customers on the websites now have a much higher intent than they did last week, which is pretty awesome. Comparing all of those macro stats, if we look at DMS sales, so true sales, month over month, we're still down 72%. So it's not like, hey, we're celebrating here, but what we're seeing are signs of life, and that is awesome. And then anecdotally, when I'm calling dealers and I'm talking to them, they're saying, hey, you know what? We're selling cars. The per sale, the sales per visit are extraordinary now. So the customers that are engaging are much higher value. The intent is through the roof. And dealers are selling and servicing vehicles.
Yeah. So now is it? I don't know if you've looked at year over year. So is the year over year lead count kind of down like year over year sales is, even though we're seeing an increase week over week that they're going in the right direction? Have you looked at that?
Yeah, year over year is down significantly. They really looking at the sales data is a good indicator to me on what is actually like our customers buying a vehicle, and then comparing that with the lead data and looking at the close rates are higher on these leads because the intent, that the work that a customer and dealer has to do now is just different, right? You just can't like pop into dealership and buy a vehicle on a whim. You're doing more active research, you're diving deeper online, and then you are going to a dealership and you're transacting typically. So
could those lead counts, are you getting duplicate leads? And what I mean by that when I see an increase in duplicate leads, it's a good thing. Meaning I get a lead from cars.com, Auto Trader, or my own website. I reach out to them and say, hey, do you have a trade? And they fill out my trade form. Oh, do you want to get pre-approved? I send them a credit app, and now I get another lead as a credit app. So now I have duplicate leads. And so the more I'm engaging with customers, the increase of duplicate leads to me is a good thing, because now I got my teeth further into the deal with them. Are you finding that happening? That's traditional way of thinking, but I'm assuming as this builds out, are you seeing that kind of build up in a duplicate leads also?
That's a stat that I'll pull. I know we try to dedupe for the purpose of these numbers. Mm-hmm. But that's a stat I'll pull as how many leads per how many duplicate leads are we actually seeing. So that's a stat I don't have right now, but that's a great one.
Well, yeah, because we started looking at leads, and then we see a big increase in duplicate leads. I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Why are we getting so many? But then it'll be a good thing, because again, we get a auto trader lead. Within, I talk to them, and then I get a credit app lead off my site. Now it comes into my CRM as a duplicate lead. And it's actually, as I've seen increases in duplicate leads, a lot of people think it'd be a bad thing, but it was actually a good thing. Now, it also may be a stat, and do you have it maybe too, between contact and DMS sales? Is there a quicker cycle happening right now? Because right now, I think dealers need to have a very long-term follow-up process right going into now, because the people that were shopping in January, February, thinking they're buying now can't, but they want to maybe later once they get out of this. One or two, the people that are submitting leads right now maybe can't do anything, but once they feel a little bit more secure, will 3 months down the road. So, but then I've seen somebody else going, well, no, you need a way shorter, because anybody reaching out right now is probably a buyer. So do you see anything like that, or have stats on that?
Yeah, we're seeing, well, what we're looking at is appointment to sales ratio, and that's through the roof. I mean, that's the highest it's ever been, right? Because like I said, you're doing a lot more work to walk into a dealership and transact now. You're not just hopping from dealer to dealers to dealers on the call. I mean, this is like Captain Obvious stuff. But if a customer is reaching out and they're serious, I mean, it's have them do as much as they can online. There's a lot of tools that we have and others have to really get as much information as possible, and then make it as easy for them as possible when they walk in your dealership, or deliver it, obviously, too. So, and it's not overly complicated. When I was a dealer, and it's funny because I have digital retailing tools today, and I'll tell you, when I was a dealer, I worked a deal, and I'm sure every dealer on this phone has done this. Work a deal on the phone, over email. You put it up in the DMS. You meet the customer, and you deliver the vehicle. I mean, that's digital retailing, right? And that's not anything new. We've been doing it a long time.
Yeah.
So it's just the tools online make it easier and allow a customer to get further on their own. But don't overcomplicate it, and just know that every lead that comes in is, I would treat it as gold.
Now, I know you got to go here soon, but one of the two things I want to ask you, one, if anybody don't know who Joe Char is, look him up and look at his background. He worked at the factory at Ford. He's been at the dealership. He's been on the vendor, and he's got a great background. Got to go to his refuel event that he does for his employees. He brings the conference to them instead of making them leave. Got to work out with David Goggins with them there, and it was a great event. But I want to ask you, kind of wrapping this up a little bit, not to put your feet in the fire, I'll do mine, is maybe what your predictions are. And what I mean by that, it's like, man, I'm hoping, and I looked at all the new car sales stats year over year since 2005. I would, just to tell you, in 2017 or 2007, we had 16 million plus sales. It dropped down to 2 years later, hit the recession, going to 08 and 09. 09, it was in the 10 millions. And it took us from 07 to 2014 to get to this 16 million again. So it took 7 years, but it only took 3 years to get to 15 million units. So, we were able to get out of it. So my predictions are, if we can do a soft opening in mid-May, my point was May, 87% of the times over those 15 years, there's only 2 years that it didn't happen, May outsold April for new car sales. So my prediction, hopefully, is that continues. If we can soft open, seeing that everybody's April has been pretty crappy, beating April hopefully wouldn't be that hard. So I'm thinking beginning of mid-May, we do soft openings for a lot of the places that are closed hard, and people start going back to work. Tax returns maybe, and this tax money starts hitting people. Maybe that's why we're seeing increases in leads. So I think May can and should be able to beat April statistically, and just based on that soft to full opening. I'm hoping by July, dealers at maybe 75 to 80% sale rates of what they previous Julys have been. And then going into winter, I think December is always strong, but I think those winter months will still be tough, because you're going to have, I think, warnings of a second wave of the virus, and people get scared. And then I want your predictions. And then two, I don't know if you've heard, I know you're involved with a lot of OEMs. If production's been cut, usually 2021s would be coming out September, October, November range, as they're trying to get rid of 2020s. I'm assuming these OEMs have a bunch of parts from 2020, and they're going to have to either rebuild these out, or they're going to have 20.5 mid-year models, and then to go into 01s. And so, one, what are your predictions and over the next 90 days, let's say, and going to the end of the year? And then, do you know anything about the productions? Will they still be building cars 2020s in November and December?
Yeah, so tackling the latter questions, the supply chain has obviously been significantly disrupted, and I think that's gonna be drastically different from domestic and imports. I can't. Well, we have a lot of relationships with OEMs. We're having conversations more about how do we help dealers versus the supply chain. I do think there will be a downstream effect there, because you have this really interesting balance between lack of inventory that could potentially happen, and the feeling that sales need to increase, which is going to drive incentives. So I do think that there's a lot of optimism, and we already saw with Chevy at 0% for 84 months, in GM, right, where you'll see a fast follow of a lot of OEMs to incentivize the market to buy new vehicles. And you're going to see that for a few reasons. One is, this was a stark reality for ride shares, for people that were banking on hey, you know what? I don't need a vehicle because I'm going to use Uber or Lyft. I'm not saying Uber and Lyft are going away. That's not going to happen. But I do think the person is valuing personal transportation a lot more. That's going to drive new thinking in car ownership, and therefore, whether or not the supply chain decreases or increases production, you're going to have manufacturers coming out with hefty incentives. So when I do look at Q3 of this year and beyond, I'm very bullish. I think we're gonna make up for lost time, and I think dealers are resilient, and we're seeing this now. I mean, what industry is actually selling out of this right now, right? Like,
Yeah.
and we're predicting sales 10 days from now, and we just see it going up from here.
Yeah.
I'm not saying gonna it's gonna be, like it was in January or February, in April or even May, but you're going to see it go up, and we're seeing that state by state. You're already hearing the news about more lax laws. I think the dealerships are gonna look different, right? Like, people aren't gonna be in the same waiting areas like they are today, where there's 100 people in there, and in some cases waiting for their vehicles. I think it's going to be it's going to be really evident how technology is going to help space appointments out. It's going to help take care of customers in different ways. Conversations, our messaging platform, having a way to video chat customers and have a conversation with them just like this or over Zoom,
Mm-hmm.
and be able to send that to the CRM system. I mean, all that stuff is going to be really important. So I'm predicting that, June, July timeframe comes, it's going to be significantly better than this today. I'm not going to say it's perfect. And then I think as we roll around to Q3, Q4, you're going to see OEMs really looking at their inventory for 2020, trying to clean that up and really making plans for 2021, pending their supply chain isn't disrupted.
Well, what I think needs to happen, and you have some voices, I know, with the OEMs too, and I mentioned this a week or two ago also, and my big push is, I think, and I'm about ready to do an article on it, is I think if done right, CPO can be the big winner out of this. The reason why is if the OEMs start backing it, and if the OEMs would do an incentive like they're doing on new cars, because of lack of supply and availability, and the fact that they, if they have these big incentives, I don't think a lot of people coming out here buying the new car, so used is going to be a good alternative. If they do a 0% for 60, defer payments for 90 days type of thing on a CPO, that will get more dealers involved in that, which will then hopefully prop up the late model values, which then eliminates the trickle down effect. It'll also help them with residual values a year or two down the road when they're trying to lease out these 2020s and 21s that they have a hard time selling. So I think if done right, if these OEMs would put a lot of focus on incentivizing CPO, I think it'd be a win-win for everybody. Everybody's stuck with these late models and these program cars, these rental rockets coming into the market. And I think dealers need to get CPO'd really good anyways, because I think it's going to be the next alternative. Not a lot of people buying new. As we know, it took 3 years just to get to 15 million and 7 to get back to where we were. What's your thoughts on that? You think that's something that these OEMs might attack?
Yeah, I think that's right on. I honestly, I haven't talked to them about it or heard about it, because the folks that I talk to often are not in the incentives piece of it. And I was at Ford. That's the last job I did on the OEM side. So I do know kind of how that works. But I don't. I think this is why you have your show, and why people should listen to you, because that makes a ton of sense, right? I haven't been privy to those conversations, but that makes a ton of sense to me.
All right. So anybody have a question for Joe as far as dealer inspired website traffic, as you dealers on the phone here? Anybody, anything out there
Hey,
that, oh, go ahead.
Jason, do you mind if I ask a question?
Yeah, please. I know he's got to
So
leave in about
Joe,
5.
yeah, like I applaud your optimism and your view. I wonder though if there's sort of false hope with this news about increased leads. Jason touched on it there briefly. You know, the customers can't really show up to the dealerships anymore. If I remember correctly, leads work, there's this whole talk that the lead, in a traditional sense on a dealership's website or even a third-party site was kind of dead. Do you think that because of the stay-at-home idea, I can't go anywhere, that whole idea of submitting a lead form has changed, and that's why we're seeing an increase?
Well, the first thing and the thing that I will say is nothing happens until you sell a car. So I could give a shit about leads or traffic, right? Because what I start with is sales. So what we've seen is a lift in sales week over week.
Okay.
That sales that was down. So that's the first thing I look at. If sales were low, I don't care if people are submitting leads, right? It doesn't matter, because you're right. If no one's there to answer them, no one's there to buy cars, it doesn't matter. So once you start with sales, then you say, well, why is that? Well, then you start looking at the type of buyer and what they're doing on the websites, and what you're seeing is the traffic not drastically increasing yet, but the quantity of leads are increasing. Consequently, those leads are more important to those dealers. And granted, this is a small window of time, right? Like the exciting thing with this data is I look at it daily, and week over week is the first week we saw it hit flat and start to go up. Now, does that mean the Fed does something next week and it drastically changes? Absolutely, like that is possible. But we're seeing signs of optimism there, and it always starts with sales. Nothing matters until you sell a car.
Cool.
Or service a car.
And with that, I think you got to take off, right?
I do. But hey, thanks for having me on. And if you guys want to go to the Dealer Inspire blog, you can see all these stats. And again, like I really think looking at sales is the most important thing.
Yep.
We'll update that weekly. Feel free to ask me any questions. Happy to help in any way. And thanks again, everyone.
Hey, thank you. Thanks, Joe, for joining. And John Anderson's on the call, because speaking of sales, we talked earlier, you're saying, as you're on some of our calls, you're hearing or seeing a little bit more in the stats, dealers chipping away and getting a little bit more sales happening. Is that right? Validate kind of what Joe was saying there?
Yeah, so Jason, it was interesting. I read an article in Forbes earlier this week, and they were talking about some of the Asian markets, and what they were referring to is they're starting to see a V type. They described it as a V in their markets, where you had a drop off and now it's starting to bounce back pretty rapidly. And they were conveying that should be good news for U.S. dealers. And so I'm looking at our dealers, and I've been on calls, and for the most part, one of our trends that we look at our dealers look at on a daily basis through our software, but as we meet with them weekly, we look at a 2-week sale trend, and looking at that, measuring that by 50%. If 50% of their sales, they're flipping their inventory at least once a month. And you could see when this started at the middle of March, that trend down and that sale trend, and for most of our dealers, it seemed to kind of bottom out right around that March 30th to the April 5th. And now you're starting to see that V that they were talking about or related to in that Forbes article, where most of our dealers are starting to get that rebound. And I agree with Joe. I mean, it really comes down to, and that's what we're looking at is sales-wise, irregardless of leads, are we selling more cars? And you're starting to see that bounce back up with most of our dealers. Because we're tracking percentage in that category, the only time I really don't see that bounce back up is when a dealer has added a bunch of recent inventory. So it's just keeping that percentage down because the inventories went up. Their sales are increasing, but because of that percentage. So I'm really starting to see that V in a lot of our dealers where it's starting to bounce back up for them.
Good. Now, Bert, you're on the call. I know I see you here in the video too. I want you to let people know what dealership you're from, but before you comment, because I know you had a couple things that you want to bring up here. But two, what John's saying, what Joe was saying, this bottom out and top kind of tripling back up a bit. Could it also be, and you being at some of your store, I know you said a couple of your stores were shut and the other ones were kind of moving along. Do you feel like the teams at the stores, or anybody here on the call as a dealer, as a manager at a store, Do you feel like now it's 2, 3, 4 weeks, you guys are into this, you get it better? Because at first everybody's got the wind knocked out of them, like, what the hell are we doing? Oh crap. And then now that it's been a few weeks, are we getting our feet underneath us at the dealerships, getting to know a little better in the process and how to handle it, and getting better, getting in front of people and talk them into seeing a car at home and stuff like that? Bert, I'd like get your feedback, because I see you and I know you had some questions and you chimed in the last couple calls, and then any other dealer after that. So Bert, what are you seeing? Is that kind of the case too, maybe?
Yeah, so I'm the used car director for 4 stores, 2 in Ohio and 2 in Pennsylvania, and of course we're shut in Pennsylvania. So the first thing we did is in our Ohio stores, and I'll share some data with you. My Youngstown area store, which normally would sell about 150 used cars in a month like this. The first 5 days of the month, we kind of had aggressive pricing, but not really aggressive pricing. We're probably 94%, 95%. We sold 5 cars in 4 days. Then over that weekend, we decided that we were just going to absolutely just cut prices. I mean, we're 90% average for the whole 150 car inventory. And we're now selling, we sold 33 cars in the last 6 days.
Wow.
It's 143 pace. And I mean, it's just, the Auto Trader stats. I mean, we went from 2.8% VDPs to 8.5% VDPs, which I've never seen in my career. Auto Trader called me today because they were like, yeah, you got the attention of like, a couple people here. So,
well, real quick, that's good, because like I said, I was on a call earlier today with one of our dealers out of Illinois, and his price to market went over the last few days, because we trended out each day, and he went from 93% to 97%. And I said, hey, maybe we need to dial, because cost to market went up too, so that tells us the market moved. So I said, dial it down at least 3 to 5%, and get back down, everything down 3 to 5%. And at the end of the call, he's like, I know you said 3 to 5, but I think I want to go to the 5. And I was thinking 3 to 5 just to see what happens. And if it worked, maybe dial it down even more. If it didn't work, kind of thing. So it's good to hear that doing that, because he wanted to go ahead and go to 5. I say, you go to 5, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure you weren't too afraid to dip your toes in it. And he was ready to go. So it's good to hear that kind of adjustment worked.
Yeah, I mean, the results have been astonishing, and it's kind of led me to believe that I think that as Dale Pollock was saying, we had a 20 group call with him last week. He thinks this is going to be a little bit slower of a recovery, and at least for the market I'm in, and it's a little bit more of a blue collar kind of post industrial market. I'm not so sure if the certified is going to be as big a winner as you might think. And again, I'm just challenging conventional wisdom here. I think that the lowest cost provider during this is gonna be able to grab market share. So we've scaled back our used car inspections to be more basic. We've really put the heat on our parts department to source cheaper parts. And I mean, every day when I get up, the first thing I think of in the morning is, how can I push my costs of my used cars down? Whether it's total inventory or reconditioning costs.
What if the OEM helped the dealer and not charge for a certification type of thing too? I heard that.
Yeah, I mean that has to be part of it, because as a Toyota store, the reconditioning costs can be astronomical on the Toyotas.
Now, I've seen 2 companies. I heard one of my reps said, and he used to work for Volkswagen dealership. He said Volkswagen offered 0% for 60 on CPOs on Saturday. He heard that. I'm like, ooh, because if they do that, somebody else will. 2, I was going through all the CPO stuff as I was doing my research. Toyota, at least where I got my information from, they said Toyota for current buyers are deferring 90-day payments for new cars, but also for CPO. I don't know if you know that, but that's what I heard too. So if they jump in that game, and now I know, and I'll get back to you, Bert, but I seen Tim from Max Digital kind of bite his tongue when we're talking about dropping prices, because I do agree. I said, one of our guys, I said, we don't want to just assume we got to go into a dealership and keep dropping prices, because it could be irrelevant if people aren't ready to spend the money. It depends on your market. If you've got a market that people are still active and they're still out and about and you can sell some cars, then maybe adjusting pricing to stir that pot might work. But then some markets, it doesn't even matter. People are like Michigan, just opening the door. They're just able to start selling cars cars virtually online. I think you got to be relevant to the price, to the market, but just by dropping the price, if people aren't ready to spend the money yet, no matter if you cut your price in half, they're just not going to spend the money. But you also got to do some validation on the pricing too, and make sure that that's right. So Tim, I know you kind of maybe squirmed there. Maybe I've seen something that you're like, oh, well, here they are, drop price. And I know, again, with your guys' BDC tool and the price evaluation, the proof.
But listen, I'm excited to hear that price actually matters because, and it's working for somebody. The conversations I'm hearing in some markets, price doesn't matter.
Yeah, so some markets it don't. So that's what I wanted to say.
So
some
I'm glad it's working.
Yeah, it's not. We're doing demos with dealers right now, and dealers are like, I love it, great, but we got expense cutoff. We can't add any more expense. We're not spending any money. So we'll talk to you in a couple months. And that could be what customers are doing right now. They're like, I'm shopping, I'm clicking, I'm looking, I might even submit a lead, but I'm waiting for that check, or I'm waiting to make sure my boss don't lay me off at the end of the month. Then maybe I'll do it, but no matter what your price is, I ain't doing it right now, but I'm interested, so I think that's happening. Want to bring up, yeah, go ahead.
Hey, real quick, I'll give credit to you because one of the things that I've heard you say on a million calls since I've been with you for a while is when we get into that price discussion, one of the things I always heard you say was, well, you only have two choices. You either need to step up or stand out. And stepping up would be, I've got to kind of get involved in that race to the bottom, right, where I'm trying to match other dealers stepping up and lowering my price. Or standing out would be, I'm looking at all those other things. And I think part of at least what we're seeing with our dealers, because I know it's something we're coaching them on, I think part of that rebound has been during this time, because we know so many people, everybody's online right now. If they're not moving forward to buy a car, they're looking for a vehicle. So when this breaks loose, they're going to move. So they're saving vehicles. And I think everybody would agree that's been in a dealership, anytime you show your attention to something, you can typically get that area to lift. And I think dealers that are paying attention to those comments and descriptions, and dealers that are paying attention to their photos and their photo arrangement, I think it's a combination of everything. And I think because of what's going on right now, a lot of these dealers have the extra time to pay attention to those things that when it's cranking in their bricks and mortar, a lot of times they don't have the time to pay attention to that. Yeah. So as a result, in a combination, I think that's where a lot of that B is coming from as well.
Now, Stephen Drell, you're on here, so I'm going to call you out. So unmute yourself here in a second. But what John's saying, if you don't mind, Stephen, if you do mind, and chat me or something. But I'm gonna reference what you emailed me about what you want to talk about. But to reference what John was talking about, a lot of times we're in calls or I'm talking with dealers, and this dealer down the street's doing this, and he's dropped his price here, and I always tell them, it's either you need to step up and either match their pricing because you're telling me you're not selling anything and he's stealing your business, or you need to stand out, or do both. You either step up. And so right now, it's almost a time where you got to do both. And going back to Tim and Max Digital again, like I said, I know your price validation stuff and your tools to validate, the pricing of the car. Don't just drop it if you got true value there. And that's where you need to stand out. You got to, you should be on Facebook. You should be putting content out. One of the first meetings here, I was telling dealers, just get out there and put some. Don't try to sell a car and incentives. Tell people about upgrading their windshield wipers right now, or come to the dealership and you'll install them for them, or get relevant in the market right now. So when they're ready to pull the trigger, you've stood out the whole time and you're ready to pull the trigger. Now with that, one of the things I wanted to talk about, what John was referring to, is is process management, all that stuff, whatever it is, the process of social media marketing, the process of price adjustments, the process of appraisals. And Stephen, that's what I want to talk to you about, because you mentioned appraisals is one of the things. I was on a GM call yesterday. Jonathan Dawson invited me to a call that he has with his GMs, and one of them referenced the fact that his turnaround time. That's going to be key. I've mentioned this multiple times. Your turnaround time is going to be your number one asset, and it should be no higher than 3 to 5 days. That was the goal when the business was standard. Now that it's changed, the goal should be no more than 72 hours, but 48 hours. But anyways, he was saying his turnaround time got to 72 hours. And I said, was it like that before, or is it that now because you guys are slower and you can get to that point? He said it used to be 5 to 7, but now they've worked on pay plan. because that's another thing somebody mentioned. I think, Bert, you mentioned talking about great time to look at excess employees and out of whack and pay plans. That was one of his, Bert, that guy on that turnaround time, he had a dedicated turnaround manager. He got rid of that person and then laid it on the hands of the service writers and stuff, but they're in the techs. But they're also a minimum of a pay period, the pay bonus on that turnaround time. So now they're incentivized to be involved, and their turnaround time is running way more efficient. He's down to 72 hours. And I said the key there, it's great to create great processes during a slow time. The trick is maintaining that. When you start picking up business in May and June and you're getting busy and you're not fully staffed yet, that process is going to start slipping through the crack, and you're going to start missing opportunity. And next thing you know, you're back to a 5 to 7 day turnaround time. So process is going to be key. Fine tune these processes, maybe pay plans wrapped around it. But the key is don't let it slip when it comes out. So Stephen, you brought up appraisals, and is a huge topic. You're from Walt Massey. What do you mean by that? Is it the process again, appraisal process? Is it missing trades? What is it when you're asking me that earlier in the email?
So, I think my thoughts are, where do you, and I'm not saying where do I need to be on the appraisal per se, but kind of where do we see the market going in, 30, 60 days from now? Is our game, because you got two sides, like you were talking about. You got a dealer, 30 miles from us that are, putting 101% in a car to make a deal.
Mm-hmm.
And, then you got a dealer down the road who we're blowing out of the water on deals. So, what's everyone's thoughts on, I know what the market's doing. And, our goal here is to retail everything we bring in. But still at some point, if we don't retail them in the next 30 days, it's probably less than that now. By March 12th or 13th, I think at that point, we've got to think about some of the stuff that we already own.
You mean May?
Being when I'm bringing in new, what's everyone's thoughts on where we need to be?
So I throw that out to the dealers and managers on these calls. Where do you guys feel like? I got daily MMR retention here. If you reference MMR at all, we're finding that to be anywhere from 10% down. Go ahead.
So what I've been doing is my two stores, I'm doing a weekly download of appraisals in vAuto, throwing them on a spreadsheet, calculating the percentage behind MMR that they're appraising the cars, and then comparing them to the daily MMR retention. I've instructed my appraisers that, they need to appraise the cars based on the daily MMR retention, not MMR. So if you got a $10,000 car and, the 5-day average daily MMR retention is 93%, you need to be thinking about that car in terms of being worth $900 to $9,300, not $10,000.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. I mean, my one store is doing it good, my other store isn't. My other store is only appraising about 2% behind MMR, and I'm like, you guys might be in trouble here in 30 days with some of these trades. So, I mean, for me, it's just, we have the data now, so it's just making these appraisers adhere to the data. If and if they need to go higher, they need to call me. I mean, I've been putting my hands on a lot more appraisals now than I usually do.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it is what it is right now.
It's not bad to step up on the trade if you got a good turnaround process and you're aggressive out the gate. You know the problem and you get off of it. And you don't, But if you're buried with age cars and you got 120 in stock, only selling 50, and I mean you're going to be hard just to get out of it. You want to make sure you're going anything's clean. One of the things I would tell you too, though, is make sure you're not missing appraisals. Tim, I want your feedback on this because I'm going to show vAuto. I know in vAuto, there is under custom dealer report. If you guys don't know, there's missed trades. And if you guys go into there, you can see what trades you've appraised that ended up online at a competitor and what their asking price is. Okay. So you could see maybe how much you missed some trades. Does Max Digital, just to chime in, Tim, is there somewhere in there too for anybody that's on Max Digital to do anything like that?
No, we don't have a report that has that sort of granular data.
Okay.
But we do have a missed trade appraisal follow-up tool, so we'll know
Okay.
whether it was pulled in or not, and what were the notes and everything. We do have a similar tool.
Great. So yeah, what you want to do is always we want to revisit any missed appraisals. And like I said, that report there will just kind of give you an idea is if you're hitting them too light and somebody around you is getting your business, then you definitely know you got to step up. But obviously, and even at that, what Tim was saying, if you go to these missed appraisals and if you try to communicate with them and the customer says they're already bought, and it's not that hard to Google their VIN number to see if somebody else has got it online. So take a peek at that and see if you're missing some of those trades.
Hey, just curious on appraisals, Bert and the other guy who brought it up, how important is the closing rate? Are you more concerned about what I'm taking them in for, or how many I'm taking in closing?
Well, what I've told them is make the deal, but you're just going to have to make it on the new car end. I mean, because, and again, my owner really wants to be right in the used car inventory because he thinks it's going to continue to trend downward, the values of used cars, and I would agree with him. And so that's what I'm telling the managers is, look, it's somebody I was talking to yesterday said it's time to bring back ACV, actual cash value. Like, what can you, what's this car worth? What can I turn this car into cash for? And I mean, because right now you can replace them at the auction cheap. So I'm not going to put $1,000 more in a trade when I can buy at the auction for $1,000 cheaper. They're just going to have to take a short new car deal, and everybody's on board with that. So I don't think your look to book should change. It's just some dealers because of velocity have kind of gotten into the habit of I'll put too much in a car, price it short, take the short deal and get out of it, which is cool in good times. But now when we don't know where the bottom is of this used car market, I think the sounder strategy would be to put actual cash value in the car and take the short deal on the new car. That's just my thoughts.
I'm going to take this right here. This is a video tip that I did on how to back into an appraisal, because the reason why this came up, and I'll share it in the chat. I'll copy it here. I'll throw it in the chat log. You can grab the URL that way. But this technique, backing into the appraisal, instead of going into appraisal with $2,000 markup, $3,000 markup, mark it up, go in there with a minimal profit if you're ready to dump the car to get a more cash value of retail out. Meaning, if I price it at 88% with $500 profit, what can I put in this car? And now I don't want you to get to 88% day one. That maybe be day 50 or something when you're ready to get out of it. But to Bert's point is, if you got in that car and you're worried about it, well, shoot, put it at 88% day one, get your 500 and just move on now. So I put that URL in the chat box if you guys want to grab that. It's, I don't know, it's a 14-minute video, but it does, I single-handedly just walk you through that on how to maybe back into trade. And like I said, the reason why it came up with this strategy was back during the recession, because I started with Viato in 05, 06, recession hit 08, 09. And if you guys remember, cash for clunkers, all this, cars were going for stupid money. You couldn't buy cars, and guys were looking at appraisals trying to make $2 or $3 grand. I'm like, well, you can't buy a car today and make $2 or $3 grand on it. We're going to go through those same phases right now. So check out that appraisal thing. See if that helps some of you guys to get through some of that too. Okay. Now, before I dig into a couple of other things, anybody on this call have a topic you want to bring up before I assume you want to hear what I have? Is there something that you like to hear what other guys are doing right now on certain issues that you're having at your store? Frank, Chad, anybody? That's right, I called you out, Chad. All right, so a couple of the other things that we're talking about. Kim, are you on this from Auto? Kim, you said that the Auto Trader had a home service piece that you can turn on for free for dealers, right? Did we talk about that last time? And I think you gave me those references, links for them. You guys having a hard time? Do dealers know that that's available to them, or are you running into a lot of dealers that didn't realize that?
We just activated it this month, actually. So the reps should be reaching out to the dealers to let them know that it's there. I'll drop the links that I sent to you, Jason, in the chat box so everybody can pull it up. But it is available to all dealers. who want to take advantage of the home delivery or the video walkarounds and, the FaceTime options to set an appointment. It is designed to drive a lead into the CRM to schedule an appointment for one of those three things. So if you don't have it turned on, I would definitely reach out to your rep and let them know that you want that turned on, and we can get it turned on for you. We're seeing a lot of activity with that. So I'll drop those links in the chat along with my cell phone. If you have a hard time getting in touch with your rep, or if you need some help, you can feel free to reach out to me and I'll find out who it is for you.
And again, this is a way that we increase sales, because up until we have this message and people know we are available to do that, we're missing some opportunities. And that brings up my other point with my dealer I was on the call earlier. He went from 700 leads to 800 leads. He's getting a lot of leads, but he didn't go check his email templates. I'm like, well, does your email template still say, when can you come in for a test drive? Do you, in your auto response or your first email, does it reference anything about bringing the car to them, touchless delivery? I mean, is the message out there? Because if sales aren't where you want them to be, but you're getting the leads, is it the customer not ready to pull the trigger? Is my process and my communication not very efficient to today's buyer and the climate? So these are tools here that are real good and for free if you're an Auto Trader client. Now, is this a Cox thing, Kim, or is it an Auto Trader thing? Meaning if they're with vAuto but not with Auto Trader, can they still have it? Is this all Auto Trader stuff?
So my understanding is they do have to have an Auto Trader solution to get it. Okay. That's a good question, though, on the certified feeds that are coming over to Auto Trader from the OEMs. I'm not sure if we can turn it on for that or not. Right. But it's definitely something that we can check into.
All right, no problem. Like I said, I just wanted to make sure. All right, with that, so go through your email templates. I think we talked about that on the last call and make sure they're right. And I know, so we covered Steven's information, Jeremy, we talked about Kim's, we talked about, I know, Bert, you're referencing, is hardcore velocity pricing going to be the new norm if dealers want to do volume? To your point about your price drops, that obviously spurred some interest. I do think dealers need a 30-day supply of cars. Not a 45, not a 60-day supply of cars. Don't carry 150 and sell 90 nowadays. You just can't. The market's going to move too much. You have that much inventory like that, you're going to have aged cars and you're going to get crushed in those cars. I do think price is going to be a driver. It was in the recession. People are going to be very tight with their money. They're going to know, okay, John Griffin, our VP at vAuto, would always say, it's a kitchen table conversation, meaning that the husband and wife, the couple are whoever going to sit down at the table and go, what can we afford? We can afford $300 a month. Okay, what does that get us? Is that a $12,000 car with the interest rate or whatever? All right, so and that's going to be the driver. More times than not over the year, a lot of people are not as brand loyal as they used to be, but some people are. But if they really die hard want a Ford, let's say, but all they can afford is the Chevy is going to win at this point in time more times than not. So it's going to be very price driven as far as their budget. Doesn't mean that they have to find the cheapest car, but they're going to find the best car for their budget. Now, it could be that your miles are better, it could be your equipment or whatever. And that's another point where I think, flat pricing being at 20 grand instead of 19,999, because people are going to do a payment calculator and say, I got approved for 20 grand, or I can afford 20 grand. So I'm going to look 15 to 20 grand. And that's how they're going to search. And I think having payment options on your website, I think Dealer Inspire and some of these other website providers allow you to do payments on your website, I think, and be able to search by payment is going to be another key driver going forward. So if you don't have that available on your site, I think that'll be a huge thing. Bert, anything else you wanted to add to a couple things that you had? Again, I appreciate your chiming in. I know we have other dealers on here if anybody wants to chime in too, but anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I'm good. I mean, it's this is a weird time, but it's kind of fun in a sick way in terms of like, watching the numbers and everything else like that. Like, you know, that part of it is, you know, fun, just crushing numbers every day.
Yeah,
For what it's worth.
it makes it a challenge. You know, it's kind of easy when you're going to work every day and had the same routine. People showed up, you sold some cars, and now you get slapped in the face. You know, you got to wake up and start looking at different things. And one more thing I wanted to talk about, I think, oh, right here. Is this Ray, John Anderson? Is this Ray who you're referring to earlier?
Yeah, yes, it is. Yes, Jason.
Okay. So a couple conversations that we've had on the last few calls, and to kind of wrap up here, unless somebody wants to chime in on some things, is cleaning supply companies and things like that. And let me drag this over here. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up, and correct me if I'm wrong, and Ray, I don't know if you're on, but I understand your product here. And again, if Ray's on, you can chime in. If not, John Anderson, fill us in. But this product is a cleaning product that General Motors has approved. Is that right? And is that available for like co-op or something? Or is this a branded product that GM stores can use to backed by GM? Is that you, Ray?
Yeah, hi, Jason. It's Ray Padilla. Thank you so much. This is just some information that we had gotten. Somebody was implementing a auto group out of Michigan, and they were able to send us there was just a headline. And again, I in no way, shape, or form represent GM, but we just got this information that apparently what we're selling now, called PermaSafe, has been at least endorsed by GM for any of those stores looking to remove anything pertaining to what's going around these days in all of our lives out of the vehicles. It comes in a two-step process called clean and shield, essentially a fogger that can be applied to the vehicle, antimicrobially, adhering to whatever kills, whatever is part of the virus now, and eradicating it. And again, it's something that I'm repping with PermaSafe, and folks can go ahead and reach out to me if they'd like to learn a little bit more. And again, I just appreciate the mention and learned so much on the call even today, and just hope and pray for everybody out there that they're doing well with all their stores. Thank you so much.
Ray, if you want, in the chat box, just put your name and either email address or phone number, either way, real quick before we wrap this up, so people can grab that if you want. And again, we're not here to pitch any products or anything like that. I just know it's topics and things that can help dealers right now, so that's why we're throwing those things out there. So now again, please interrupt me and chime in if we want before we wrap this up. But you know, I do think kind of, and again, let me just give you guys some insights, because this is just kind of where I go for my kind of try to feel good about how things are looking. You know, I see headlines of governments and talking about doing a slow roll and opening up. Obviously, there's going to be social distancing. There's probably going to be masks that you're going to have to wear in our lives and for a while. And I get all that. But if we could just start opening the economy back up, it's going to make a big difference for dealerships and people with jobs and security. Should I go ahead and get the car? I don't know if I'll be employed a month in May or not, you know, that kind of thing. I think it's going to draw us a little bit closer. I think with these checks are hitting, these $1,200 checks. We might be getting a spike in leads that way because people got their checks and now they're going to go ahead and get that car while they can, but they might have needed it. But one of the things that I think hopefully what my point was is I'm hoping we're inverted to this chart here. This is United States, and this is the cases. And as you can see, we kind of hit the peak in April 10th, and it's been dropping. Now we had a little bit of a spike on the 14th yesterday, but that was at the same level what I looked at the beginning of March. And so what I'm hoping is, if you count this out, it's about 14 days. If it drops off at the same level that it peaked, then, you know, by going into May, or going at the end, it's 2 weeks basically, because this is every day. There's about 14 spots here. And that means beginning of May, we're back down to this kind of level. So hopefully that works out. But what I'm saying is, I think we're inverted. I think we hit our rock bottom with sales and everything else here. And then hopefully as this goes down, our sales increase. But I do think you got to have everything that we've been talking about lined up. Make sure what Auto Trader's talking about. Get the communication about how we can deliver at home. Talk about the cleaning stuff, the cleaning supplies, and what you guys do to keep the cars clean, and the employees and people showing up to the people's home. How you can do everything online, and make sure you're following up. Make sure your photos and descriptions. Please redo your photos. We talked about this last time. If your cars look fresh on the lot, think about that. Right now, anything that looks dead, you walk through the grocery. I was at Home Depot and somebody sneezed and I avoided that freaking aisle, right? And I'm not very cautious. I didn't wear a mask. It's just like, I'll wait for a little bit before I go down that aisle. So if your cars look cold and worn out and snow, I mean, it's just going to make it feel old. And, you know, freshen up your cars, get some spring pictures going, make it feel fresh and new, and talk about your cleaning stuff, and get people excited about, you know, stepping out of their comfort zone and go ahead and getting that car. Make sure the follow-up's there. So hopefully we're inverted, and our sales are a little bit increasing slowly but surely, and going into May, we have some, again, year over year, May's always outsold April. My warped mind, just to give you, again, I say warped mind because I sit there and created this whole stuff. I've watched patterns and looking at new car sales rates and how they affect used car sale rates and everything, and I've done all this. And like I said, May is at 87%. It's always outbeat April. June only beat May by 13% of the times. Over the last 15 years, June was better than May only 13% of the time. So traditional, the only time, if you go back up in here, was 05 and 06 that June, I'm sorry, was better than May. Since 2017, June was worse than May. I point this out because I think June actually will be better. If May comes out, June I think will beat May. Okay, and then it gets up to 47% that July beats June. So half the time July beats June. And if I'm a betting man, July will beat June. And then August, 73% of the time, August has been better than July. So it really doesn't dip till September and October. Then it builds back up November and December. So I do think each month going forward will get better. I think we're on the inverted. So get these, and so we're going to get busier, and we're short staffed. As a dealer, we're not going to just throw all the staff back into place. We're going to slowly add it. So these processes that you guys are fine tuning is fine to handle right now with this one manager. But as more customers and more things are happening and we haven't hired again, more things are going to be piled onto that person. That process is going to get slipped through the cracks. So you're going to have to find the key ones. I would say lead follow-up. I would say, well, number one would be turnaround time. Process, inventory, photo, price, inventory merchandising, meaning your photos and your pricing, is going to be another process I would not let slip if you got better through this slower time. And internet lead follow-up. Okay, that's all the stuff that's going to sell your cars. The social media marketing and SEO, SEM, all that stuff is fine and dandy, but these are the three things that are going to sell your cars and sell them faster for more profit, and that's what we need right now. We need to turn this cash, and every lead is cash. Figure out what your processes are that you got really good at. My three would be those. Figure out what yours are and make sure none of those slip going forward. All right. Because it's just going to get better, and we're going to get distracted and tied up and busier, and that's when things start falling through the cracks again. All right, anybody else? I think that's a pretty solid meeting here. Anybody want to chime in? Tim, you got anything to add? No?
Great call, man.
No, appreciate it.
Good stuff.
All right, and then share it with any dealers that you know. Like I said, I hope you guys enjoy this, and I hope you guys get stuff out of it. And then just let's plan on next Wednesday again. I'll shoot it out. And what I'm probably gonna do, and just let you guys know on the call right now, I'm probably just gonna go ahead and make next week that go-to will be the same one week after week. I'll notify you. I'll send out some email. But if you just have next week's, I don't want to, you guys can log in and do it and everything and sign on and stuff. But sometimes that gets complicated. I'll get emails saying, hey, it's not working. Is it full? And I'm like, no, here you go. I might just make it the same one time and time again from here on out. And I'll continue this going forward. I think it's just good because 3 months from now, guys are still going to get their feet underneath them and still trying to figure it out, I think. So let me know if you guys need anything, and have a solid rest of the week. Thanks for everybody chiming in. See you. Dun, dun. Boom.